Ready?
You going to get started?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and call to order and roll call, please.
Jeff Barr.
Present.
Ryan Green.
Here.
Kyle Cook.
Here.
And we officially started at 8:39. We need to do an election of chair. I was the previous chair before to move this meeting along. I don't mind doing it again and would like to do it unless you guys want to.
That's fine. I'm good with it.
All those in favor of Jeff Barr being chair of the facility committee meeting, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Election of chair is done. Mr. Stannard did provide an executive summary. Thanks, Sean. And we also have the lease as a whole. The first thing I wanted to make sure, Nicole, do you have a copy of this? Okay, good. Is that we do have new council members, but also to refresh council. Sean, could you kind of just go through the highlights of your executive summary, and it's more just informative so we know where we're at, timeline, cost, etc. Kyle, you may have some questions, or Ryan, and we'll go through that. Give it here 4 or 5 minutes. Mr. Stannard.
Sure. So, as you're probably aware, we sold the 599 South Main Street location, which we're currently in, to the school for a variety of reasons, one of which is a multi-purpose building which is taking place here very shortly. They've got a rendering and they've been through zoning, so Kyle and Ryan probably have an intimate knowledge of what that will look like, as well as the design review board. So that also is facilitating the use of the back garage space for their softball, wrestling, and Dr. Wagner gave a brief description of all of the variety of things that are going to happen back there. So, but we are still maintaining a presence in the building. Skip to the terms of the lease, a little out of order here, and that is starting in 2025, July 1st was the commencement date. Our 5-year that we have without a renewal, which is an option to renew, runs us till 2030, and then we have one option to renew for an additional 3-year term, and that would take us to a total of an 8-year term. So we've got about 7.5 years left in this current facility. And also, it should be noted for the extension, lock it in your calendars now, 2030, probably April, probably earlier than that, probably December of 2029. We'll need to give a 180-day notice that we want to renew if at that time that is the desire of council and staff. So that kind of gives you through the terms of the lease. Rent structure, base rent a whopping $1 a year. So I think we may elect to bite the bullet and pay all 5 years at once. I'll see if Dave has the funds in the coffers and get that check written. And then for the renewal, we can pay the additional 3. The common area piece is a little bit more complicated. There is some level of cost associated with that. Fluctuates and varies. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with common area maintenance fees, how they typically work, and this would be this similar situation here, is if there's things that are done to the building, there is a cost to the owner of that building. Some of those costs are passed on to the tenant, which we are the tenant, and right now we have an estimated CAM cost of $31,000 per year. Again, those can fluctuate depending on the amount of improvements or repairs that need to be done over an annual basis. There is an escalator in here. Some years it's around 5%, other years it's around 8%. So it does fluctuate. There is a build-out schedule, but for easy purposes, 5 to 8% annually is what you're looking at. Again, with that CAM, anything over $63,000 triggers a cost-sharing provision. 65% of the cost we would be responsible for, but also there's a amortization piece in here. So let's say a whole new HVAC unit at $20,000 needs to be replaced. It can't come all in that year. Those have an amortization, a depreciation, if you will, actually from an accounting perspective, a depreciation built into them, so they depreciate it out over 10 years. Anybody that does accounting knows you can't write off an entire HVAC unit, and the first year has to be depreciated for tax purposes. So the same would happen here. That cost would not come in all at once. It would be depreciated, and then depending on the unit, if it were the council chambers unit, it would then be split. If it was above our unit, probably be a little bit more heavily on our side. As far as utilities go, we split utilities up by square footage of the building. So we occupy about 65% of this building. So our participation of utilities will be 65% of that. Let's see, back garage, the one that's not attached to this facility, kind of sits in the back, big double door. That is ours exclusively, so any type of heating or maintenance that needs to be done, that is on us. They obviously own it, but they have no room sharing of any sort that exists in there. So all of the maintenance or heating, should we choose to heat it, would be done by the city. Let's see. Right now, just to be open and about it, we've got a pretty good relationship with the school as it relates to maintenance and repair. So they've already fixed the roof, as Dr. Wagner pointed out in his presentation. HVAC, we've had some issues there, and they've fixed some of those. We have continued to plow the area, and they have probably taken on some things that probably should have been on our side of the ledger. So I think if you keep that good relationship with the school, we're probably not going to go to the letter. It's probably going to be more in your favor, to where they're going to replace and maintain more than probably what's necessary. And as long as our guys are usually doing the salting and plowing, more than likely that'll continue. But all those things are flexible, but there is verbiage and language in here that gives us a backstop. Should we ever have any questions on who's responsible for what, it can always go back to this item. That is the high level. Early termination, we are obviously able to get out of the space with any type. I believe there's a notice requirement. I didn't have that in here, but the school is totally fine if we were to move out.
Is that also, that's the initial 5-year, and as well as, because it's a 3-year, not a three 1-year options, right? So it's
correct.
any one of those terms.
Yeah, so the initial is 5-year, locked in, and then one renewal of 3 years. Yep.
Right.
It's not you're correct, Jeff, not a 1 year situation. But, and I'd have to check, but I should have had this, and it's in here somewhere. Early termination, I believe we just have to give them a certain amount of notice. And
It's on the second page.
thank you, Chief. It will not be, it should not be an issue with them. They are ready to take over the building whenever we are ready to move out. I'm certain that they could use this for a variety of other activities. I think initially they were wanting a little more space for additional athletic and potentially school district offices. So they're operating, if you're aware, in one of the, I believe it's the intermediate school. I wanted to call it Searfoss, but elementary, but that's not the case anymore. So it is the intermediate school, and if we were to move out, I'm quite certain that they would move their school district board offices and things like that into here. So, but we've got 7.5 years, kind of a long runway to get some things in order. Cool.
So on page 2 of the lease, you'll see the CAM rate, that it's $3 per. It increases by 25 cents for the CAM, and then we have utilities and some maintenance cost. Sean, I don't know how you did it, but I would have looked at the CAM and said, all right, we got $32,000 in a payment. What did you budget anything for above and beyond, I would assume, as far as for utilities as well as any other kind of maintenance, to say, all right, we're budgeting $50,000 for the first year of the lease to cover the CAM, utilities, and any kind of maintenance?
I would have to check with Dave, but I know with Dave, the utility payments and things like that, he didn't reduce what we typically pay, so we should be fine there now that the school's picking up. Their portion of it will probably be to the good. However, escalated of utility bills may just kind of equalize that, all things considered.
Okay.
So utilities, we should be fine there. budgeting what we normally did on an annual basis. CAM rates, I believe Dave has this baked in into the sheet from an expenditure piece. I don't know if he put it into, I would say, not he could have put it into legislative, he could have put it into probably a little police and a little administrative. Since the building touches on all three of those pieces,
Right.
there's usually a built-in cost associated with maintenance. If it's police-related, Chief, you've got that line item in your particular budget. I'm certain that you probably got,
So the CAM spread across several accounts as it relates to administrative, legislative, and as well as
I
people.
believe that is how they got it correct.
Right. Again, this was, I think, Sean, was to be informative so that new council members knew where we're at today. It's already been done, can't go backwards whether you agree or disagree. But here's where we're at today. You see the time frame of it. You see the CAM escalation, from year 1 to year 5. It's roughly $10,000. Maintenance would be more, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to spend too much time on there unless you guys got some questions.
That's pretty, thanks, Sean.
Yep, okay. Next item on agenda is future facilities location discussion. What I'd like to do is, Sean, I think when we kind of got this started, there is some city-owned land that's a possibility for this committee as well as public at the meeting as well as staff. What I'd like to hear, Sean, is these are options. It's nothing more than brainstorming, and we're not trying to decide this is what we're going to do today. It's just so that this committee knows what some options are so we can start putting that pen to paper. I think we already know that the Hannah Park American Legion property, I think there's some property next to the sewer plant that you had mentioned that it's a possibility. Other than those two, Sean, are there any other large enough parcels of land that the city owns, whether it's a great fit or be really difficult fit? Are there any other options?
Yeah, and to your point, Jeff, I will walk through these at a very wave top level, not to insinuate that is where we're looking at specifically, probably more from just an inventory, if you will. What do we currently have in inventory as far as land? Those options could be considered. Some could be tossed out quicker than others, but again, it's not to insinuate that that's where the city would go. And I'll also preface, there's probably some things that will happen within the next 5 years that could allow for the city to acquire additional land or development that makes sense for us to be in a different situation. So let me walk through the Hannah's Park. Hannah's Park does have a fair amount of land associated with it, but the site does have current facilities and park usage on it. So that is one potential area that could be utilized. Sewer plant land. It is, for those that aren't aware, we bought quite some amount of acreage back in 2012 or 13 at sheriff sale, and it worked out well because then we ended up acquiring a larger piece of land in between Mink Street, almost all the way to 62. There's one property owner that has a parcel there that limits our access to 62. So with that said, we have that area there. Some topography items over there. There's challenges, but there's opportunities if that was to be evaluated. It is downwind of the sewer plant. We say sewer plant land, people, I know Chief automatically thinks of noxious fumes and such, so that would want to be considered. The placement of the facility would want to be in a manner that doesn't obviously consume you as you drive into it. However, there's a large amount of acreage. I think there's 20-something plus acres, so put that in context. It's not like you're right on top of the sewer plant. So again, some topography issues. There's a little bit of a hillside, but there's also some land that could be utilized.
When you face the sewer plant from Jersey Street, it's to the left.
That's correct. Yep. And if you were to go up, there is a substation there that's operated by Licking Wool.
Yep.
And I don't know how long that facility will exist. Just tell you that should be something to consider. That.
Any other inventory that the city currently owns?
Certainly. So, city-owned land, we also own Businessman's parking lot. So, at one time, a little bit of backstory, there used to be additional building structures on Phelan Street, the only brick street that we still have in town. And back in the old days, there used to be, again, storefronts, shops that used to face Phelan Street. You look at the footprint there, and if you moved 20 spots, you could probably facilitate a 2-story building there that would give you a presence in the downtown. And there's a variety of other options that go along with that. You've got built-in parking, so costs associated with additional parking could be something. Again, we also maintain that parking lot from a city perspective, but we don't have a presence there, so maybe it justifies some of the expenses that we put into that particular area. So there's a possibility there. From probably an administrative piece, maybe difficult to shoehorn a police station in that specific location, but an administrative building, there are some advantages that are baked in to that particular piece. Let's see, we also own some property over on John Street. That one is being utilized quite heavily by our street department. So there could be some potential if you had to shoehorn something in. Again, probably not an optimal situation because there's build-out scenarios associated with the street department. So that would solving one problem would probably bring about another.
Right.
Let's see, we also own or will own some land back by the T.J. Evans Park. Just for background, Thomas J. Evans actually owns a big portion of the old Baylor property, actually all of that, but the city will be deeded some land on the other side. Again, not an optimal situation, but that was through the Schlaball agreement. I believe it's more dedicated and set aside for park area.
Where the bog is on the other side?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you
it's
got
6
some
acres
bog.
there.
Yeah.
What'd you say, where?
Where the bog is, the
Oh,
log.
yeah.
Cross over that bike path there.
Okay.
So
6
again, not
acres.
an optimal situation, but if we're just looking at pure inventory, that one should be evaluated. I know I'm missing something else. Obviously, where the sewer plant sits, where the water plant sits. Again, those particular lands are probably more dedicated to those particular services. I will tell you that as development comes online, never a bad opportunity to review what the development plan looks like, and if it makes sense, ask for some land associated with, some either police facilities or city administrative facilities.
So Sean, sorry to interrupt, that's a good segue. You've hit that property that we do own. I want to park development for a second, development opportunities, because that, as they present, is when we could. But time is the most important factor, because we only have 7.5 years. I would say that from identifying whatever it is to occupying 36 months for assessment, design, engineering, construction, move-in, etc. So really, we've got 4.5 years to figure it out, because the 1 3-year lease, we should be starting something at that point in time. I mean, if it's new construction, it's going to take longer. If we acquired or moved into an existing building, you've still got design, engineering, some construction, it would be much quicker. But we should be looking more about at the end of the initial 5-year lease. We've already identified plans, etc. So the reason why I bring that up is, before we get into the possibility through development and land acquisition and building there, we do have an option to purchase an existing building, commercial building that would be for sale. So, for example, if I know of realtor, developer, somebody bought the old Shaw's Hardware, if that were to go back up for sale today, we have that option because that money that we sold for it's earmarked, if you will, in a larger account where it's money where it's earning interest, correct?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff, and a good segue. So some of the benefits of selling the building that were talked about was the ability to have liquid capital available so that you can act immediately. So, and perfect segue. If we had the money, the city could have potentially purchased the old Shaw's Hardware building. I think that thing's probably, 7 or 10,000 square feet, would have facilitated the administrative offices
Yep.
pretty easily, would have been a great opportunity. But you got to have that money in hand in order to do that, and then you've got to have a buyer for this to obviously switch. So we've got some benefit by having that in a banking account, and just pointing that out. Davis is creating a separate account for that. So that will be identified in your annual budget. And right now, it's obviously the 1.2 million. That will be put into an account. We'll obviously be working with Fifth Third, who does our investments. There's only so many items that you can invest in from a municipal standpoint. We can't just go buy shares of NVIDIA or Intel, whatever the case may be. Usually got a pretty low risk situation, but we can certainly invest those funds. And we've done that with the water, and so that over the next 5 years has the potential to actually gain some revenues associated with it. So going back to your point, Jeff, again, the Crow Works building that sold to Professional Vision Care, another opportunity that would have been fantastic for city administrative offices. I think that sold for like 600, 700,000, and it was, in my opinion, turnkey ready. So those are the things that we want to be looking for, and I'll dance in this delicately because I don't want to show the city's hand, because anytime we start to get interested in a property could have some, so I won't specifically mention a property, but I think there are some areas of town that have some redevelopment opportunities that that the city would want to highly consider, existing structures that we could evaluate and look at and maybe make some moves in that direction.
So, Sean, would we engage with a commercial realtor to, if you will, inquire, investigate into some of those opportunities? Would that be the approach?
I would tell you, let me choose my words carefully, so give me one moment. Okay, I've got a path forward without saying things that will jeopardize. In other municipalities, whenever they're looking to acquire or ensure that a development happens in a way that is consistent with their comprehensive plans, they form what's called a CIC typically. It's a Community Investment Corporation. That CIC is quasi-private. So it has some affordable protections that maybe aren't associated with the city, and so my recommendation, and almost had this off the ground, as you're aware, finance director had a little bit of a leave. We were getting ready to tee that up. We at one time had a CIC still, from accounting purposes, in existence, but it needs to get
Reinvigorated?
Sarah just has no money in it.
It might actually have some money in it.
Does it?
Not a lot, but I think it has some funds associated with it. So we've been filing the necessary paperwork, but the board hasn't had any life to it. So that is one item that I tasked Dave with back in the spring of last year, and I said, hey, this is an agenda item. Really want to get moving on. Let's get this sucker implemented and back to life here late spring, or I'm sorry, late summer, early fall. And as you're aware, took him out of pocket. So I would heavily recommend that we get that back up and operational. It's a board that utilizes members from the community, but also council members and staff is also a part of that board. So utilizing that tool would be my recommendation on inquiring or hooking up with a realtor or however you go about it, that's probably your best tactical move. Get that up and running. And honestly, it's not just for the city facilities. This is going to be able to help in the midterm, bring puzzle pieces in. So for a good example, if you're aware, New Albany has some things happening in that downtown area. Over the years, they've acquired a lot of those parcels through the CIC. And then also private developer has purchased some of those as well. Between the CIC and the private developer, and the years of acquisition, they are now able to actually resell it to a developer that is going to do what the city is wanting to do with that property. So public-private partnership, if you will, and that's where those funds can be really, really utilized to take advantage of some of those impediments that may stand in the way, and take some abandoned properties. But honestly, if you drive through New Albany and you see some abandoned properties or houses that just seem run down, it's a possibility that the city may actually own those.
Yeah. So Dave will be tasked to, for lack of better words, invigorate the CIC to get it up and running, to use that as a mechanism to, if there was a site to pursue.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. That answers that question. If the city, we know we're going to probably annex land. We have nothing right now in the near future, but thinking strategically that if you got outside the city, there's nothing by law that prevents us, if we were to purchase land and build there, that might be in Monroe Township, just outside city limits. My experience in previous employers, we're sitting on prime real estate that it should be commercial instead of a city hall or PD building. Not ideal, but where administrative buildings don't need to be in the heart of. I mean, it's nice if you can, but that's also an option as well too, correct?
Certainly, yes. So, and again, with that CIC, you can purchase things strategically that are outside the city corporation limits. You could do that either way. But yeah, if you're doing some planning, which is always suggested, and we did a little bit of this walkthrough when we looked at some land inventory for parks. Gosh, we did that probably about was that a year ago, Jeff?
Yeah, it's been a little more than that,
Okay.
actually.
So when we started to look at some land and say, okay, where does it make sense for parks to exist? Because as development comes, if you haven't identified where you want parks to exist, it's going to get developed in the way that is consistent with the developer's plans to set of the city of Johnstown. And once we lose those opportunities, it's going to be harder and harder for you to get them back. I'm always constantly saying, where's our Bevelheimer Park? Doesn't mean we have to have it now, but we need to probably identify some land that makes sense. We did have a couple things bubble to the surface during that exercise, and those can certainly be dusted off, reevaluated, and again, from a parks side, probably more than an administrative, but if you want to combine the two, never a bad thing. When you're looking at facilities, something that really strikes a chord, and I'll use some examples from New Albany again. Parking is typically a large cost associated with any type of a facility. And unfortunately, parking doesn't get utilized except for certain times of the day which that facility is in operation. So if you can maximize the parking in a shared sense, to where if you've got a park area where it's going to be really active at night, because you got a lot of activities, but then during the day it's utilized by administrative staff.
Yep.
Those are some win-wins. Same thing with the school, which is why New Albany has such a robust parking in its downtown, is because some of that's associated with the school. So in the evening hours, much of that parking is freed up. But you'll notice if you go there during the day and you go to like some of the churches and things, they've got parking spots that specifically are for New Albany school district students. So when you can have that synergy between the organizations, that's going to save you some cost. It's also going to minimize the amount of pavement. So things to think about. So if you're looking at parks and you put an administrative building there, that could maximize it, or open up some lands. I think of the sewer plant land.
We don't have any parking associated with that entire 20 acres. If you wanted to add a parking lot that could be facilitated for dual purposes, well, you've really checked some boxes, and now the community has access to maybe some trails that then go in after that. So think of those things whenever we're working through this.
Sean, I said I wanted to park development opportunities. So we'll, any questions on, we talked about current inventory, we've got a little bit of CIC. Any questions? All right.
The next thing that there is in my budget, a line item specific to increasing that revenue that we have from the sale of this property. It was mentioned in the budget as well.
I'm sorry, one more time?
You want me to take it? So in the budget, and what we've identified, and we wanted to make sure that we're planning appropriately for the police. Every year, I believe it's right around $40,000 or $50,000 that we've added to the police budget for future facilities. So whenever I did the calculations on this about, I don't know, 8 months ago, baking in the fact that we're going to need a certain amount of revenue to build a police station, and maybe not have to go bond all of it, started to squirrel away some of that. So in the police fund, we have an administrative capital improvement build-out piece that about 40 or 50,000 gets squirreled away every year. So if you take that out over the 8-year period, 8 times 50, that's an additional $400,000 that's going to be available. In addition to that 1.2 for a police station, and then also the interest that you're gaining off of the revenues that are sitting there in those accounts. And then we also have some debt that falls off. I can't remember the specific date, but it will allow for the city to free up some borrowing capacity. So you'll have the ability to bond without affecting what you currently pay out on a debt service annually.
And that was brought up in a budget meeting last year.
Sean, you had said that you were squirreling away $50K a year. You mentioned the 8-year lease for $400K plus interest. Prior to that, had the $50K been, so is there an existing balance that's available?
No, we did not have that account set up in that.
Okay, so
manner,
there's nothing to bring forward with it.
Yep.
Thanks
So
for-
money starts when, this year?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Development, the one question that I had is related to any planned development unit. We have one existing there, you have the NCA with it. Is that opportunity through planned development units using the NCA 9.75?
Yeah, so you can certainly use the NCA for a variety of purposes. There's a lot to unpack there, and I won't get into the details of it, but it has to do with the board where they opt to put some of these funds. We'll tell you the NCA for the beginning of this will go towards the infrastructure, or at least that's how it's being structured. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in the near future with the infrastructure development agreement. But again, NCA can be used for a variety of things, but there has to be agreeance on where those funds go, not just by city council, but by some other boards as well. So again, in other municipalities, they've utilized those things for school buildings, community buildings. And as I've always said to council, we got to get the foundation built first with the infrastructure. Once that infrastructure is paid off, then you get to have some fun. So we got to be patient. We'll get the house built, and we'll get the big screen TV in the living room with the couch and the rumpus room and the pool table downstairs at a later date. But get that infrastructure in first. There's some things that are going to escalate the amount of revenue that you get, or things that could delay. So that's a moving target. That's a whole other conversation to unpack, probably at a later date. But that NCA, again, it's not a guaranteed constant. There are factors that get baked into that can determine the influx or decrease in cash available. So,
Sean, regarding that, our existing PDU, in any discussions you've been having with that owner, is there any possibility where you know, as you start to take the land mass of the 450 acres now, started in the low, but it seems to be 450, maybe approaching 500. As you start to lay stuff out, roadways, utilities, et cetera, is it possible that when it's all said and done, you know, here sits a odd-shaped, probably need 4, 5, 6 acres. Is there, and again, it's an art, not a science, because there's very little that's been coming in there yet, but from any experience or talking with them of, hey, that's a possibility, and all I'm looking for is, yeah, it's a possibility, but not very likely, or, hey, it's pretty good possibility. I'm just trying to gauge
Certainly.
that.
It's a possibility, but not very likely.
There you go.
That's the answer you want, and I say that, there's a variety of factors that get baked into this. One, you have to go back to the original agreement, and there's a per unit mathematical formula associated with parkland. Depending on how many units they have is worked into the calculus, dictates potentially some either A, land that has to be identified for park, or B, a monetary contribution in lieu of. But again, that's baked into the number of units. We've already seen modification to that zoning plan that reduced the acreage, didn't reduce the units, but it reduced the amount of acreage. If that entire site were to switch to economic development related zoning as opposed to the multifamily, I would say that specific site may not be available for that parkland donation, but there is a provision within the PD district zoning text that allows for an increased to that PD district area as long as it's within a certain radius. So where those units are still in the bank, if additional land was acquired within close proximity, they could essentially move that bank over to an additional property, and then once those units would be utilized there, then they would be beholden to the amount of parkland or payment in lieu of. So again, that one's a little bit more of a moving target. It's fluid. Depending on where things land, will determine parkland, potential land availability for the city, or payment in lieu of, what that looks like. So again, those are things that I can't give you a hard answer today, just because they're moving targets. If they decided to just all of a sudden put 200 or 300 units on the area that they have a right to do, that then would trigger the formula to say, okay, you got 300 units, now you got to do this, and then we would have a hard number to go off of. Keep forgetting you guys are out there. I'll try to do more of this.
Specifically with that PDU out there, though, is that, again, there is this essence of time that we're 6 months, half a year into our initial 5-year, that, like you said, it's a moving target out there that, yeah, they're all options, but does it fall within the timeline that we have on the lease of this building? Or, excuse me, the lease of our existing space, and preparing, like you said, like I said earlier, is that you want those last 3 years that we're either renovating or constructing, not trying to still figure out what we're doing. So
Yeah,
I kind of covered what I wanted to cover, more of, to get the group kicked off, inventory, some discussion of possibilities. Specifically, I wanted to more about, thanks for saying the CIC. Is Dave being tasked to get the CIC up and running? So that's something already in place, that if we went that route, Sean, what's the time frame that you think? Like, have you given him, have it completed by first quarter 2026, second quarter? What's the timeline look with that?
So I had Dave tasked to bring it up right before budget. I think he was starting to get things ready, but then obviously some things happened. Dave is working his way back into more of a full-time role.
Right.
And I say full-time, he's full-time, but he's also working from home while he's here. So I have not brought that back up to him and said, Dave, I need this by a hard date, because I'm still digging out. Just this week, we were getting POs set up for 2026. Dave just started to come back to the office December 5th in a part-time capacity, and now he's finally getting full-time acclimated. But still, it's that 40-hour piece. It's not, the 45 or 50 that sometimes directors do. So it's something we can put on his plate, and I'm certain that if we task him with it, he can put it there as soon as he gets some of those bonfires that are in the front
Sure.
simmered down, bring that sucker up and get that done. So we'll have a conversation with him and say, hey, Dave, is this something we can get probably by the end of first quarter, maybe by the end of March? That'd be a good time to get, some board meetings scheduled. Again, with your facility plan, I think, yeah, you're right, Jeff. You're going to need a year for construction. We're not building a water plant or sewer plant, so it's not going to take 2 years. Multi-purpose building, if we use that as a reference, they're going to break ground. They'll be complete within a year. So as long as you have a year correctly timed, you'll probably have a long enough runway for construction. But you're going to want to start your engineering probably a year before that, and then the year before that, that's when you need to probably find the facility, the land, or the facility. So once that 5-year renewal kicks in, you don't have to have something already purchased or engineered by that date, but at the very minimum, once that 5-year lease expires and you get into that 3, you need to find a spot that you're going to be looking at. You probably got about 8 months, and then after that, you're going to have 2 years to build it.
I really want to, I think it would be prudent to have the location identified prior to the end of the 5-year, and then giving yourself the 3 years, because another year of the 50,000, another year of interest, et cetera, is what we should be eyeballing, because this committee will report to council as a whole of that is what this committee was formed for, was for the purpose that we need to execute that plan, give recommendation. I appreciate Ms. Shook being here, being part of it, so that she's aware of. So 4 of 7 council, and I have 2 years left on my term. You guys just came in 4 years. We know that's time certain that we should be eyeballing those dates by the end of year 5. I meant to say time certain on this meeting to probably go no more than an hour. We're at 9:21. Sean, I had one question regarding it. There's with getting our CIC kicked off, if there was a piece of property that was recently came listed or listed here in the next couple of weeks, and it was an ideal location, are there alternative CICs, meaning like could we go through Licking County CIC? Could we have a friend with, if Newark had one, or Heath, or New Albany? Is it possible to work through those boards in any way? Since we don't, I know we have our setup, but we don't have an official board. We don't have somebody that would reach out to a property owner's representative.
You could, I think, utilize a neighboring CIC, if you will. And let me unpack that. So I think if a listing came available,
I got to take his call. You guys keep talking.
if a listing became available, you could certainly make a bid as the city. The advantage from a CIC perspective is having a conversation if it's not listed. That gives a little bit more of separation between who the purchaser may be. We have public documentations, records, and things like that. So, Jeff, I was quickly stating, if it's listed, I think you're fine if you make a bid from a city perspective. It's the properties that aren't necessarily listed that then it becomes advantage for the CIC to engage in those discussions, so you're not tipping a hand. Because if it's listed, usually it's going to be it's somewhat of a market level rate.
properties that aren't listed and haven't been identified properly from an evaluation and valuation standpoint can get a little wonky as far as what people may believe that they're worth, and maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. So yeah, I don't know if a property were to become listed, you wouldn't be held back from working with a local realtor just from a city capacity.
Okay.
And reaching out through them, to inquire or purchase. Professional Vision Care, we could have easily reached out to a realtor, made an offer.
John, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So the CIC, what are the advantages of forming that CIC? And would there be a conflict of interest if we used another city's CIC?
I can't probably talk to if we utilize another city CIC. I don't have any background or experience with that, so I would have to dig into that. But some of the advantages, again, is that ability to have a little separation between the city and the CIC. It just gives you mechanisms that, let's see.
I think
allow
one advantage
for-
of using our CI, like if we formed it, I would think from what you're describing is that we would have our people helping to make the decision as opposed to another city's, nothing against any other
For
city.
sure.
That's what I mean. I don't.
Yeah, you would want,
The discussion of using somebody's CIC, that seems a little.
Yeah.
That-
I'm not,
What
Yeah, I
I
was like-
meant by using, like, I think Lincoln County has a CIC,
I don't know.
but using them as an example is that, and Sean answered the question, is that if you had a piece of property you wanted to sell today, you have a representative, we could hire a representative to start negotiating to purchase that property if it was identified. The CIC is more for about land that is not listed publicly to purchase, right? I mean, that's what we would want our CIC for. Knowing that we could just hire a local realtor to reach out to your realtor answers my question that we would not need to use another CIC since ours is not formed. I did not mean to imply to use another one to substitute ours, because the CICs, my experience is that they do have funding through hotel bed tax is where they would get revenue, is one place, and then those board members are the typical representatives. You know, they're developers, they're realtors, they're businesses that hold multiple holdings within the community, et cetera, and they collectively work together to say, we amassed 26 acres by putting 10 different parcels together under one and selling it as a large unit rather than a developer trying to buy it up a bunch. I'm getting into the weeds. But thanks for answering that question, because if property came up, so if there was existing property available today or in the next 3 months, I would assume then that we would need to engage in agreement with a realtor, maybe one already exists through previous, that is still active, if you will, or valid, or we can just certainly update it. Do we?
The city hasn't utilized a specific realtor recently, but two options: if a property comes up, you can use the agent that's actually listing it.
Right.
That has advantages sometimes, sometimes it doesn't, but you could utilize that agent, or the city could reach out to an agent that they so choose at the time, and that agent could then represent the city in that manner. Typically, it would be, city manager and that agent, you're working
Right.
together. What we've done in the past is said, in executive sessions, not to exceed. And that's the beauty of the CIC. It's a corporation, so you don't have to follow all the guidelines of, well, we got to meet on a Tuesday. We got to have a special. There's got to be a meeting called. So it allows maneuverability a heck of a lot quicker, and decisions to be made a hell of a lot quicker, so that you're not bogged down. Because sometimes real estate transactions, you got to have decisions made, in a week. or a day, not in a month, that the city usually operates in,
So I feel like it would be prudent that we engage and get into an agreement with if it's somebody, I mean, I know of one that is in the area, Steve, that's in the commercial real estate side of things is an option, but Steve Altman, who's I'm referring to, there are others, but it would need to be authorizing the city manager to engage in agreement with a commercial realtor and have that person or company queued up. And that would take act of council. Would we necessarily need to identify that company or realtor in the agreement?
I don't know that you would need to. I mean, first thing that would happen is if something come available, well, if you wanted to have that agent start to look specifically, they could certainly do so, and you can engage that particular agent. It's a professional service, so
Right.
you could just instruct the city manager to reach out to a
So we don't need to do a formal resolution for an agreement. We could just,
No.
professional services, engage.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, reach out to a local realtor. Obviously, you all could.
And would
try to
we,
do that.
could we do this out of this meeting to give direction to engage, or would you need to do it from a city council meeting?
Let's see, so flow of things.
Because there's four present, not that it's a meeting, not that we're deciding anything, it's just giving you direction. We don't need legal act. We don't need to have a resolution or ordinance to give you that direction to engage.
So, there's two things. One, you could do it by resolution. It would have to be a formal council meeting. And the resolution could be rather simplified and just simply state, hey, Sean, we'd like for you to engage with a local realtor to start the process of potentially looking for properties now until,
Right.
2030. And it could go on. And as long as you got something there, it kind of signals. The other way you do it is by appropriations of the funds in some capacity. Now, it's a little bit more tricky because realtors work on commission. It's not like they're going to charge us a monthly fee
Right.
associated with it. So sometimes just by appropriation, it's an action. But again, there's not a fee associated with it. But maybe you could just, from this board, make a recommendation to council saying, hey, our recommendation to council as a board is we would like the city manager to engage with a local realtor to keep an eye out for potential properties that the city may be interested in. And if you bring that to council from your committee, council would then say, let's go ahead and make a resolution authorizing the city manager. That way it's in the meeting minutes, gives formal direction. Another way you could do it is you could set goals, goal settings. If it was a top 10 priority, obviously that would signal in some capacity from that goals that this is a high priority that you want to focus on. Therefore, the city manager, just in his operational pieces, he should know or she should know that if this is something you want done, hire somebody to start this initiative.
Are you thinking that we do that until we have a CIC in place? Or?
Yeah, I think it would be prudent to have somebody, so I'm going to use Steve Altman as the example, is that he has commercial experience, not just residential, and using the commercial side of it is that, yeah, this parcel may be listed today, but somebody with his experience and knowledge also knows that you got 10 over there that's, there's 6 more that's going to come up that might be a possibility as well too, that then would talk with the city manager to say, this one over here is kind of good, but this one I know is coming up soon, and it's even better. And so I think that's why it's prudent that we get somebody engaged so they can start looking. We don't need to make a decision today, but we need to be ready to strike, if you will,
If something, an opportunity
right.
arises.
I mean, Is there a 10 out of 10 piece of property or building out there? Sure, maybe. Could be in 6 months, could be in 16 years, we don't know. Is there a 6 or a 7 out of 10 ideal piece of property that can work, that comes up in the next year? We have to really strongly consider that. I am no real estate expert whatsoever. That's why it's a committee, and having a commercial realtor can identify, like Sean said, is that, hey, it's got a parking lot. Yeah, it's in crappy condition, but
Yeah.
it's an existing parking lot. You
I
just
guess my
need-
question was, do we use that until the CIC is in place? And then that, say, Steve, your service is no longer needed, does he go into the CIC? Like, what does that look like?
I think you're gonna use them in tandem either way.
Yeah.
I mean, just
So
having
you're
local
saying
agents
keep it
involved in the
Yeah.
process,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna identify those properties.
Yeah.
'Cause agents are talking to everybody every day.
Yeah.
Trying
Yeah.
to turn over new deals and
Yeah.
things, so I think even if you have a CIC, you're gonna still involve local real estate professionals.
Yeah.
Nicole? You got any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the quicker we can
Yep.
make that happen, the better off
Yep.
we're gonna be, to be quite honest. I mean, I'm always a proactive person,
Yep.
so as long as we can, they can come to an agreement together and make that.
Yeah, not to draw you in, but I figured that's.
Sorry.
No, I know, I
Sorry.
just, yeah, no, that's, I did.
So sorry.
I said your name before I looked at you, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were doing.
I got part of it there, though, but
Yeah.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we,
I mean, ideally, I think, you're gonna go through the process and try to do the CIC. You're gonna try to do all these things you wanna do, but properties come up
Yeah,
every
no,
day.
I was just
So
asking. I
if,
agree.
if a Goldilocks property comes up tomorrow, we've gotta be ready.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen downtown before
yeah,
several
because,
times.
but correct me if I'm wrong, like the Shaw's Hardware, somebody bought it, they're improving the storefront, but there's no identified tenant or anything else, so.
Thanks, Jeff, because I was like, is there something going in there? But there's not.
I-
They're not
had-
going council for anything, have they?
They had that record store, and then I think that
understand the
backed
record
out.
store is going to where Jackie's place was.
Yeah, that's what I heard, so I don't know, I think it's up in flux right now, and they came in to get their approval for their storefront, but as far as anything else, no.
Business, or was it just a person who bought the building?
It's someone who bought the building, and they're just doing they're doing the store frontage as far as I know.
There's been a
Unless
couple
they've
of
got-
ideas that have flopped back and forth, but
I was
nothing
gonna say,
landed.
it
Yeah.
has not been named in
No.
that particular location.
No.
Right.
Right.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
No, and maybe they have an agreement, a lease agreement with some other entity, and we just don't know yet. I'm just saying that as an example, that could be something if we had a realtor that, could inquire to say, and they're like, hey, yeah, we'd be open to it.
Some nosy realtor might reach out today and see.
Yeah, because that's a parking lot we already have. I mean, it'd be probably administrative, not PD. But, what do we got? You think about 20 years from now, you might have, a dozen people to as many as 20 people coming in to park. But there is parking there.
Yeah.
During the day, it's not, I don't think there's a
No.
parking issue. I mean, parking in the downtown is going to continue to be an issue.
Yeah.
Depending on what changes there and what may come, but that's a whole nother issue as well. Okay.
Just a thought, not this committee meeting, but maybe at the next one. First things the realtors are gonna ask, how many square feet you need? How many parking spaces you need? Then that's for administrative, then they're gonna turn to the police chief and say, what's your 10-year projection on square footage space that you need? So in order to give some guidance, you may want to, again, next facility meeting, take an inventory of what we currently have. Do you want to have a council chambers, or are you still able to utilize this? Those things fluctuate, what would make sense and what wouldn't make sense. So if we talk about the Shaw's building, large space, we can generally say, it probably would work. However, get into a little bit tighter box, is that gonna be enough space? What's your 10-year projected, facility staffing needs? New Albany, they've got that fantastic, beautiful building, but they're already out of space.
Yeah.
Now, that's a normal situation. You project for a 10, 15-year build, maybe 20,
Yeah.
and they've gotten the usefulness out of that, and they've started to expand in other areas and have departments in specific buildings. So, and you could certainly do that with this, but identifying potentially the parking. Do you need a council chamber? Do you not? How many offices are you going to need? All those things may be helpful. I can give you background on Mason Equities, who owns the Shaw's building. We'll talk offline to just give you some background. They're looking to do some apartments upstairs as well. They got to come in for a conditional use. They've been made aware of that. There's a whole variety of things there, but I would tell you, I don't believe they have interest in selling unless it's a very large number.
Yeah, and I was just using it as an example. And Sean, you make a good point as well, too, is that you take a firm like JLL. I work with them a lot, is that they have a team that are real estate experts, and they would come in, you would hire, pay fees to assess what you currently have, what your needs are, and then give you, this is what you need. You're paying for it. Again, not trying to say that we need to do that today, but that may be happening in the next several meetings throughout 2026. We may need to engage in a firm that tells us some things because we don't have the institutional knowledge or expertise, et cetera. Sean, you make a good point, we could continue to use council chambers, or these chambers that would be owned by the school if they said, yeah, you can use it forever in perpetuity. We don't need 1,400 square feet in here. It's just administrative. But there's something to be said about the convenience that the clerk of council has the space right next door to go back and forth to work as well, too. So all those factors are part of it.
And again, with a police building, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but I'll do some of the lift for him so he doesn't have to. I would heavily recommend that for a police facility, you engage with a professional firm that not only helps you identify the land that makes sense from an access, proximity of what it's surrounding, security, all of those things from, again, location to facility. There's firms out there that have some experience in that realm, that maybe that $40,000 expense or $30,000 expense to hire a professional saves you $300,000 of whoopsie daisy, why didn't I think about that later? There's a variety of things with police that's a little bit different than admin. You've got sally ports, you've got security, you've got bulletproof glass, you've got accesses and entrance points. You've got the cars that are speeding out of that particular facility, sometimes running hot. You've got prisoners. Are we going to have prisoners? We're not going to have prisoners. How do we corral them without them being accessible to the public or in view? So all the things that I probably didn't even think about, and those are just the quick list. I would recommend utilizing some kind of funding. Still got a long runway, but once you start to get closer, because it's going to be hard to determine population
Sean,
now versus 5 years from now.
The 2026 budget, you had 50,000 for future. In our next meeting, I would like to talk about that, and I think it's probably wise money spent to use that 50,000 to get that engaged in that professional now. Because the last comment I was going to make is that it's probably the PD building is most important versus City Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, got a long runway. If you ask them to design or look at your current inventory, they're only going to look at your current inventory. If you've got 2 or 3 years under your belt, you throw them 5 or 6 other varieties of situations or properties to look at, they're going to evaluate all those. So I totally appreciate you wanting to be proactive. Some situations it may be too far in advance to facilitate those services, but getting ahead of it, I commend you all for trying to do that. But you've got a little bit of time to let the dust settle, and I think there's going to be some things that happen in the next 3 years that are going to allow for some different opportunities. In 3 years, that still gives you 5 years, 4.5 years, which is plenty of time. But in 3 years, that's a long time. You're going to see some things happen that I think are going to present opportunities. So I just wouldn't want to see you spend the money now, they're only as good as the information that you give them, and if you can only give them 4 or 5 sites, they're gonna give you 4 or 5 sites back. But if you wait 3 years, you've got some
If
time.
you want, next meeting, I can provide the committee with companies that are out there that this is specifically what they do.
I don't think you need to wait for the next committee meeting, Chief. I'd go ahead and get them together and just email them to the committee. And then CC the rest of council, just so they can see, and maybe a couple sentence descriptor of what it's for, so the other council members not in attendance today know what it is. Sounds good. Yeah, because if we focus on PD, like Sean said, there'll be opportunities, you know, there's always something to do in a pinch if we don't have a city hall. We have council chambers to hold our meetings. I think the school board indicated that we could do that. You could rent space, doesn't have to be in the city, could be outside the city. You know, there's easier options for administration space than there is a PD. PD is less. It is its own beast to do.
Yeah.
So I have nothing else. Kyle, Ryan?
Yeah, another business?
No, I know we're trying to be concise with this. I can send emails with my questions.
I got a few minutes. I mean, I do need to kind of get going. I built in,
Running too.
Well, I want to bring up another business, though, if we can talk about the Legion lease.
yeah, sure.
Now, am I allowed to talk about this?
It's because it's not in or it's not
No,
on the
because
agenda.
I'm on Legion.
Oh, well, that adds
I
are
can
you,
go out there and sit and
are you
give
just a
my
part of the
opinion.
Legion because you're a veteran, or are
Technically,
you?
second vice commander.
Yeah, if you're gonna talk about the American Legion lease,
I think I
would
should be over there.
definitely, yeah, without question.
Yeah.
Now, you
Are
can
talking
always
on
do what
behalf
you wanna
of
do.
the Legion, or you
I'm
talking?
only advising.
City, but it's conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a role, as far as we'll call it a board seat or some capacity, a leadership role with the American Legion, again, we can't tell you what to do, you can make your own choices, but my advice to you from a legal perspective would be to obviously not, yeah.
We'll move on to item 5 under other business. Ryan, do you have any other business?
Well, let's go ahead and,
You can talk out here.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So let's go ahead and talk about one potential site and some future planning there. So obviously, we have the Legion lease that is on the table under discussion. The Legion Hall being a site that we own as the city and a potential site for somewhere to move. One of the points that I was gonna bring up in this meeting was, you know, I wanna have our ducks in a row with everything before we enter into long-term commitments or anything like that. If we think we may move into that area, I wanna have everything set up so that we don't accidentally, cut our own nose off, So that's what I wanna make sure of. Where are we moving? What are we doing? If we're going to go into a lease on a site that we own, that we may want to work with in some capacity in the future, I want to make sure we do that the right way. So we can talk about the lease. I don't know that we're going to have our ducks in a row of where we're moving to, funds, all that stuff. I don't know if we're going to have all that in order before we can do the lease. I don't think we will. Because it seems like we have a longer runway, but we can definitely talk about the lease, but I want to be open in a way where we're leaving ourselves open for possibility in the future.
How long are we going to make the Legion wait?
That's the question. So that's the question council has to figure out. So I'm not against the Legion, but I just don't want to prejudice ourselves.
I don't know.
On our own planning.
We're already in a lease with Legion.
They are, yeah.
So, I mean, adjusting the lease now actually draws back the amount of time that's on that lease, and
Right.
it just gives them more opportunity to provide more for the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we look at the lease and adjust, we can tweak it, because like one of the things that I noticed, for example, is that in the current lease, we have to provide them with a new location.
Right.
And that was fine when we had other locations to put them in. But if we keep that in the lease, if my understanding is correct just by reading it, because I'm not a lawyer, we would have to then basically pay for them to be somewhere if we had to ask them to leave. Not that we are, or, you know what I mean?
You know, the improvement updates they want to make. How much-
Oh, yeah, I want that. I'm just saying, on that one point,
Yeah.
you know, on that one point, seem like thing. And so, and I think if we just tweak that a little bit, I'm clear.
Let me ask this question to the chief. Of that location, from your professional experience, is it, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it a good location, meaning it's like a 7 or 8, or, man, it's a terrible location and this is why? Do you have any perspective
Just to throw you on the spot,
of that location?
And mind you, if we put you at the top of the hill, you guys can sled down to your cars, you can park there in the snow.
I'll rate it a 4.
And it's below average for what 2 or 3 main reasons why you think it's a 4?
There's residential directly behind it, beside it. There's a cemetery right next to it. There's only one access, essentially right off of 62. It's a long access. It's hidden from the public. The building is not going to be large enough. It would need renovations.
Enough.
Off the top of my head, that's all I got for
Okay, I got you.
I could throw some more in if you want.
Okay, go ahead, Sean, please.
You're gonna have to look at stormwater management.
Yeah.
That site has some topography challenges. So you're gonna have to put in a retention pond if you're gonna have to come into specs with a legit parking lot. If you build a facility, you're gonna have to have stormwater management. Those are from an engineering perspective. I can't speak to the vehicular traffic, how it interacts with parks and police, and as Chief mentioned, access, that's probably gonna be more for Chief.
So from the perspective of the chief and the city manager, it's probably, you know, even though we said brainstorming at the beginning of property that we own and inventory, it's not mid-level ideal or even ideal. So, you know, it kind of ranks at the bottom of existing property.
I would agree.
Right? And that's good perspective to know, that could help into the conversation of what to do with the lease. To your point, Nicole, how long are we going to make them wait, right? Because they want to execute so that they can execute future plans. Not that I'm want to make a decision today or anything else like that, but I think it just gives perspective of, is that, I mean, if we had our firm hired today and they looked at that and said, yeah, you don't even want to build even close to that, so go do your lease with the Legion. We don't have that firm hired today to give us that perspective, but,
Jeff, you may have more knowledge on this than I do, and I can't remember, but at one point, and I don't know specifically where, that used to be the old village dump.
Yes.
I don't know where that dump ended and began, but I do know the tennis courts, one of the reasons it doesn't hold up is, from what I've been told by the old timers of Johnstown, is the foundational area there was not secure. Now, I don't know, after so many years, maybe it can settle and be compacted, but I'm bringing it to your attention so that you can investigate where that dump was located, if it was located, what type of fill was done, so that way you can evaluate that before you get too far down.
well, the fact that it used to be that, there would be environmental studies that need to be done, from the environmental perspective as well too, methane gas, et cetera, but also from the structural piece of it is that, you know, you're not going to use the existing building as your new PD. You're going to demolish it and build a new one. Then you got your parking lot and everything else, which that's where it comes into play from the structural. So as you start to put all those pieces together, it becomes, you know, if you thought it might have been a 6, 7, or 8, now all of a sudden becomes a 2, 3, maybe at best a 4. And I do agree with what you said earlier, Sean, is that I think with the PDU that we have existing and other things that are going to come in development, that's probably a better opportunity to get flat land and it could be likely incorporated into other infrastructure improvements that the whole site is going to be needed versus that location up there. So to try to give a positive note on the lease with the Legion.
Just-
Well, yeah,
feeling
I
better.
don't wanna, I know you guys have a timetable, and I don't wanna hold you up. I mean,
Is there a
this
timetable, Jeff?
We're hoping to start to, in February, towards the end of February, start on our mechanical drawings, go through zoning, planning.
So I'll put you on the spot this time, like, from your perspective, you would like to have this lease, the lease renewed, whatever it is we're doing. I want it done by this date, if I could wave a magic wand, meaning from the Legion. You're probably going to say today,
December.
okay,
Last December.
last December. So you're looking for it
We can have it.
sooner than later.
Yeah, in February, mid-February would be, what would wait the magic wand.
Okay, thanks for sharing, I appreciate the,
If it is buildable,
If it wasn't mid-February or late February between the city and the Legion to get stuff done, what kind of, I mean, does it give a significant economic negative impact in any way?
it would affect the STEM program that we want to do, the summer STEM program.
Okay,
It would affect that, it would affect the senior learning lab and the computer lab.
all right. So programming would be an adverse effect. I wouldn't call that severe, in all honesty, it just delays it, I understand. But I was looking for more of, hey, there would be a significant economic impact to the Legion because,
I can't come up with a why that quickly to
okay.
tell you there is one.
Understood. I just want to try to get a perspective of where you guys are at so that we can be good partners.
The plan with the remodel, one of the benefits of it is to bring in more rental income.
Sure.
So there would be, but would it cause us not to be able to give 20,000 back to the community? And say no, would it cause us not to be able to give 30,000 back?
Okay. Any other business?
I had one, but I'm going to go to the audience. I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but I think I need to. It's
Okay.
nothing controversial, so this is totally safe.
All right, 9:55. I do want to conclude this at 10.
Real quick.
All right.
Super quick. So I'm coming as a resident to your facility committee meeting, and my son will kill me if he finds out about this. But before he wastes a lot of energy and exercises, he's going to come to council and everybody else. He's doing the Eagle Scout project.
Okay.
His idea was put a Gaga court up at Hannah's Park.
Okay.
Now, it would be out of the way, I think, of anything you were planning associated with it. It would be over by the playground equipment, and then possibly planting a couple of additional trees up there for some shade. I think right now there's only one. Before, as dad, get your project done, get your presentation done. Is this something that you all would be interested or agreeable to allow them to do on city property?
Yeah, as long as there's a flat spot up there that he can do that on. And
He went up there last Saturday. He's got 3 potential areas to give you
Okay.
an option, whatever you all want. Measured it out, so this is where it could be. One of them's actually in the mulch area. Another one's just off to the shelter house. And another one's another area. I said, you gotta give options. That way they can decide.
Sean, I'm certainly open to it. I appreciate him willing to do it. My son, when he goes to summer camp, Gaga Pit was his Gaga. I don't know if it's Gaga Pit game or Gaga. Had a lot of fun doing it with it. One recommendation I'd give you is to reach out to Mid-States Recreation, located on South 310, south of 161. They're a playground equipment company, so they want their presence known in Central Ohio. So they have CAD folks that might be able to help in some way. And then you got to buy those panels and things. They sell that stuff. They are a friend of mine, and your son's father, I'll put him in touch with a salesperson there that can help facilitate that on this Eagle Scout project, because part of that is also having some community partners, so, yep. Cool.
Well, sounds like in opposition, so I'll continue to push him along. If you understand a 15-year-old boy trying to get into
Yep.
do it, like, sit down, you're not leaving your room until you get X, Y, Z done, so appreciate it.
Sounds good. Anything else under other business? Teresa, Chief, Nicole? We don't make a motion to adjourn, we're just adjourned. Right?
Make a
Can,
motion.
yeah. I make a motion to adjourn our January 23rd Facilities Committee meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or do we not need a second?